Right then, let's move on to our sort of historical spot, which we now do on a Sunday morning. John Corbett Arnott, age 15. Elsie Ansell, age 21. Rex Gentle, 30. Gwilym Rowlands, age 50. And James Clay, 82. Do those names mean anything to you? They're the victims of the worst terrorist attack that Coventry has ever experienced. They were all in Broadgate, in the city, when what's known as the Bicycle Bomb attack took place. This is an attack that was carried out by the IRA in August 39, and not many people seem aware of it in Coventry these days, but I'm pleased to say Simon Shaw joins us now to tell us more. He's a local historian who's written all about it. Simon, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Molly.
Hello. It must sadden you incredibly that this tale has kind of been forgotten in Coventry.
It does. In a city of peace and reconciliation, I'd like to think we remember them.
Well, tell us what happened in August 1939.
I'll set the scene. Friday, 25th of August, 1939, Broadgate, Coventry, 2:29 p.m. It's market day. The city centre is packed. Propped against the curb outside Astley's shop is a tradesman's bicycle. In its basket is a brown parcel. The bicycle is clearly new, as there is no company advertised on its nameplate. Next door to Astley's, 21-year-old Elsie Ansell is looking at the window display in H. Samuel Jewellers. She's on a lunch break from nearby Millets in Cross Cheaping. She's due to be married in 2 weeks' time at St. Barbara's Church. Maybe she's looking at the wedding rings and daydreaming about her big day. 15-year-old John Corbett Arnott from Radford and his colleague Rex Gentle, aged 30, from Newtown, Montgomeryshire in Wales, have just finished their lunch break and are returning to W.H. Smith, where they work. Young John, with his curly hair and glasses, is a familiar sight to Coventrians as he sells newspapers and magazines at the store. Rex has only been in Coventry for a couple of weeks and is lodging with John's family in Daimler Road. There is no work in Newtown, so he's doing relief work in Coventry. Today, Rex changed his lunch hour so he could spend it with John. 50-year-old Bill Rowlands works for Coventry Corporation as a road sweeper, and with a colleague is tidying the pavements and gutters outside Astley's. Bill belongs to the Transport and General Workers Union. They sweep around the bicycle and a parked saloon car. 82-year-old James Clay, who works as a confidential clerk for C.A. Gray & Son Printers in Broadgate, is feeling ill. For the first time in 6 years, he has left his regular get-together at a nearby cafe with a business friend earlier than usual. One of the topics they may have discussed was the looming war with Germany and whether the last-minute diplomatic efforts could prevent this. James is making his way past Astley's. 2:30 p.m. The parcel inside the carrier basket explodes without warning. In an instant, these 5 people's lives are lost.
Gosh, Simon. Blimey. Now, 5 people lost their life in that instant. Were any others in the surrounding area injured with the bomb?
There was up to 100 people injured.
Wow.
About a dozen or so quite seriously injured.
Did the IRA take responsibility instantly for this?
Well, not instantly. Just in January the year before, the IRA leadership sensed that there would be a war in Europe, and there was an old maxim in Irish republicanism: England's danger is Ireland's opportunity. So because they were not satisfied with the partition of Ireland and they felt there was unfinished business, they thought this would be a good opportunity to remind Great Britain of this. And they launched a campaign known as the S Plan, or the Sabotage Plan, to target the infrastructure of Great Britain, electricity stations, railway stations, firebombing commercial premises, destroying manholes and sewage systems.
Was this attack part of that? I mean, was there something specific other than people that they were actually aiming for with this bicycle bomb?
It was part of that campaign, but it is believed the actual target was not intended to be Broadgate. It was intended to be an electricity generating station. I'm not sure where. I think maybe in Radford on Sandy Lane. But for whatever reason, the person who cycled Clara Street in Stoke to Broadgate, abandoned that bicycle outside Astley's.
Was that person ever found?
He was never found. I think it is common knowledge in Irish Republican circles who he was, but he was never brought to justice. Was
there any word from the IRA after the attack?
Well, they regretted the incident. They said that was not the target, and this was not meant to happen. And when 5 people eventually went on trial, charged with murder, and two of them were IRA volunteers, the other 3 were just, they weren't in the IRA. The IRA volunteers lodged at their house in Clara Street, and they were acquitted. But the 2 who were found guilty were hanged. But they had no knowledge of what the person on the bicycle was going to do. They thought he was going to bomb an electricity generating station.
And not target civilians. The actual civilians, the citizens of Coventry, I mean, they must have gone into some sort of shock. What was the reaction in the city?
Well, as you probably imagine, it wasn't a good time to be an Irish person. You had to keep your head down. Many people had to leave the city. There was up to, 2,000 to 3,000 Irish people working in Coventry at that time. And obviously, 99.9% of them were just as horrified as everybody else. The attack was condemned at all Catholic churches in the city and denounced. And there was a lot, blood was boiling, and it was a bad time for the Irish. You had to keep your head down.
Is there a memorial these days, Simon?
There's no memorial. The actual bomb site lies just between the Lady Godiva statue and the entrance to Cathedral Lanes. Obviously, Broadgate is being changed once again, but there is no memorial.
Would you like to see one?
Well, I don't think it's rocket science to have one. A local councillor did make inquiries, but he came back to me that it's a bit of a hot potato. He couldn't get the full support of all the council. Now, I've got Irish relatives, and I know lots of Irish people, and no one at all would be offended by a memorial. It's not an attack on the Irish people of Coventry. No. It's just to remember 5 people who lost their lives.
I believe the bicycle, what's left of the bicycle, is at a museum, isn't it? Well, it's at the Little Park Police Station,
Little Park Street Museum. It was, my late mother told me about that when I was a child. She was they call it the Black Museum, and she told me about some of the gory exhibits, and she said there's a bicycle from a bomb attack in there.
And that's that one.
She didn't know much about it herself. So I did get to visit and speak to Tony Rose, the curator, who allowed me to photograph it, and he opened the case up, and you can still smell explosives on it.
Really?
It's quite a moving moment, to be honest, and sad.
Well, you've written an article on these events, haven't you? For people who would like to read that, I mean, how do we get hold of that?
Okay, Rob Orland, who runs the Great Historic Coventry website, he was kind enough to host the article. The website's Historic Coventry, if you just search for it on the internet.
Okay.
And it's in the history articles section, and it has some photographs and background information. And there's been a few twists and turns have come up since it was published, actually. I've got quite an interesting story if you've got the time. It won't take long.
Okay, yeah, okay, go ahead.
But back in August 1939, Les and June Ravenhall and their young family were visiting relatives in Coventry and Warwickshire. Now, they lived in Holland, in The Hague, and Les was an agent for Coventry Eagle Motorcycles. Now, obviously, war was looming, so their relatives in Coventry were trying to get them to come back to Coventry. They're saying it's not going to be safe in Holland. There's going to be a war, come back to Coventry. Well, of course, the IRA bomb exploded. So the Ravenhalls kind of, well, you're telling us it will be safe here. We'll take our chances in Holland, thank you very much. And what actually happened when they went back to Holland was the Germans invaded within the year. Les Ravenhall was sent to a camp in Silesia, and June was left to bring up her 2 children on her own in Holland. Now, during the war, the Dutch resistance approached June and asked if she could shelter a young Jewish man, a journalist. So she weighed up the options, and at great risk to herself and her family, she agreed.